What if Deku stayed quirkless? Chapter 10. Deku sat in his dorm, staring into the mirror. His blood-red eyes and yellow pupils stared back at him. It was unnerving seeing himself change so much. He looked up at his hair, which was now significantly more spiky and a darker shade of green. "What kind of monster will I be when this is over?" said Deku. Deku went down to class. We talked about work studies program and were introduced to Mirio, who requested to fight everyone. A few minutes later, most of Class 1A was lying on the ground beaten. Only Deku stood facing the seemingly invincible Mirio. "None of my attacks are landing. What is this guy's power?" said Deku. Deku jumped in for a massive spin kick, but his leg went straight through Mirio. Deku kept up the pressure though, kicking again and again, faster and faster, but nothing was landing. However, none of Mirio's attacks were doing any damage either. Whenever he would land a punch, Deku would just redirect the energy and barely take any damage. "You're a tough one," said Mirio. Mirio smirked, picking up his clothes and putting them back on. "I'm not interested in fighting until one of us runs out of energy. Neither of us can harm the other, so let's end this here," said Mirio. Deku was surprised but didn't complain. He was starting to grow frustrated with not being able to get a good hit. Later that day, Aizawa pulled him aside to talk. "You've received a request for a work study, Midoriya," said Aizawa. "Huh? I haven't even put in a request yet. Haven't done mine," said Deku. "I know, but when they found out the first years were doing work studies, they immediately asked for you," said Aizawa. "Who is it?" asked Deku. "Sir Nighteye," said Aizawa. Deku smirked. All Might's former sidekick was specifically asking for him. The next day, he and Mirio went down to Nighteye's agency. Deku walked into the office and saw Nighteye sitting at his desk. "Ah, Midoriya, thank you for coming. That's my All Might voice. I chose my All Might voice for Nighteye, apparently." "So, why are you so desperate to have me?" said Deku. "You see, All Might told me about you. He said he met a kid who could handle 100% of One for All, but he turned down the power. I didn't believe it. Someone with a body strong enough to handle that power? But when I saw you defeat All for One easily at Kamino, I knew it was true. Young man, what you did out there was incredible. This is why I wanted you. I wanted to see how strong you are and how formidable a hero you can be," said Nighteye. Deku smirked. "Sounds great to me," said Deku. "Excellent. We're about to go on patrol, so I hope you brought your costume," said Nighteye. "I wrote midnight. Oh, this one's going to be a mess." A little later, Deku and Mirio were walking along talking to each other. "Wait, you're really quirkless? Then what's up with your eyes?" said Mirio. Deku shrugged. "The doctor thinks it's some sort of mutation my body's going through to make me stronger. I'm just as confused as you, honestly," said Deku. "Shut up." "Well, it's really cool, man," said Mirio. As Mirio said that, a small girl ran into Deku and fell to the ground. "Oh, I'm sorry," said Deku. Deku bent down and saw the bandages covering her arms and legs. "Oh, I'm sorry about Eri. My daughter can be so careless," said Overhaul. Mirio instantly recognized their target and pushed Deku's hood over his head. "Careful, my friend. Your hood fell down again." "Don't worry about it, sir. We should have been more careful," said Mirio. "Mirio, her arms," said Deku. Mirio shook his head. "What happened to her? Why the bandages?" asked Deku. "Like I said, she's careless. She hurts herself sometimes when she plays," said Overhaul. "It's a lot of damage from just playing," said Deku. "Come on, don't be mean. Please, don't mind him," said Mirio. "So, what agency do you belong to?" asked Overhaul. "Oh, we're just students, far too lowly to be claiming to be part of an agency. We're just using our internships to get some experience. Speaking of, come on partner, we need to finish patrolling this sector by lunch," said Mirio. Mirio began to walk off, but when Deku tried to stand, Eri wouldn't let go of him. "Please, don't go," she whispered. "I'm sorry, sir, but your daughter seems to be scared," said Deku. "A reaction to being scolded. You really shouldn't be making assumptions about people," said Overhaul. "Yeah, everyone's different," laughed Mirio. "What are you doing to this girl?" asked Deku. Overhaul sighed. This situation is kind of embarrassing. I would prefer to discuss it where we wouldn't be overheard, said Overhaul. Overhaul walked into the alley behind him, closely followed by Deku and Mirio. Children are tricky, so determined to do whatever they want, said Overhaul. Overhaul went to take off his gloves when Eri jumped out of Deku's arms and ran over to him. Have you finished your little temper tantrum? Asked Overhaul. Eri nodded. The two walked off. Deku tried to follow, but Mirio stopped him. He was about to get violent. That's why she left, said Mirio. Deku gritted his teeth in rage. A few minutes later, they met up with Nighteye and explained the situation. He has a daughter? Nighteye asked. Back at the hideout, Overhaul vaporized one of his men in rage. We are almost there, said Overhaul. A few weeks later, the police had finished their investigation, and along with the heroes, gathered outside the compound. Several police officers walked up to the door with a warrant, but before they could ring the doorbell, the door was smashed down by a massive villain. The police officers were thrown into the air, but Deku used his binding cloth to grab them. The heroes immediately rushed into the building, smashing through any villains on their way. After getting into the underground basement, they came to a wall blocking their way. Let me take a look, said Mirio. Mirio hopped through the wall, then poked his head back out. The corridor continues behind the wall, said Mirio. Deku smirked, taking his stance. Let me clear the way then, said Deku. Whirling wind. Deku slashed his hand along the wall a couple of times, and it collapsed. As the group ran, Mirio pulled ahead thanks to his quirk. Deku tried to keep up, but even he had to slow down for the ever-shrinking corridors. Come on, Eyes. This has to be the work of an enemy quirk, and I need to find out where he is, thought Deku. Deku focused and eventually saw an eye poking at the wall far to his left. With a flick of his wrist, he threw his binding cloth at the villain, hitting him in the eye to stun him, and then with Aizawa's erasure, defeated him quickly. They immediately ran after Mirio, but after Deku cut the wall, they saw something truly horrifying. Mirio was barely standing, bloody and beaten, with a spike sticking into his gut. Behind him sat Eri crying. Deku could feel his heart pounding hard, and he knew what to do. He sprinted towards Overhaul at max speed, but Overhaul didn't care. He placed his hand on the ground and shot a wall of spikes towards the group. Deku's eyes went wide as he dropped into a stance, batting the spikes away from him and the others behind him. He was barely able to keep his ground, because he was having to switch between the water stream and the whirling wind so often. Sometimes he needed the powerful striking power of the water stream, but then only a fraction of a second later he would need to change his entire breathing pattern and stance because he needed the incredible slashing power of the whirling wind. Deku couldn't keep this up for long, and he could feel himself growing tired. Eventually the onslaught ended, and Deku's hands were left bloody and broken. Come here, Eri. Come here and I won't slaughter them all, growled Overhaul. Eri stood up, but Deku held his bloody hand in front of her. She isn't going anywhere with you. You will fall, right here, by my hands, said Deku. Very well, Eri. You've made your choice, said Overhaul. Overhaul shot another massive barrage of spikes at the group. Midnight grabbed Eri and Mirio, running back through the hole they came in through, whilst Deku used his binding cloth to pull himself over the attack. Deku shot up into the air, then dropped back down, heading straight for Overhaul. The villain shot more spikes at Deku, but he slashed them to ribbons with his whirling wind. Hiccups. Deku's fist smashed into Overhaul's face, sending him spiralling to the ground, but he refused to give up. He span around, launching another barrage at Deku. Just like before, Deku deflected them and destroyed each spike just that came for him, but he knew his hands would soon give out. His body could heal itself, but it only seemed to kick in with serious injuries. Overhaul looked on and noticed this. This child was strong, but he was slowing. Overhaul raised his other hand and suddenly slammed it down on the ground as well. As Deku was destroying smaller spikes, suddenly a massive spike shot through the others. It was too fast for Deku to react, and it stabbed through his torso and slammed him into the wall. Deku coughed up some blood and passed out, as Nighteye yelled from across the room. Mirio looked on, saddened, seeing Deku's limp body strung up against the wall. Mirio, get Eri to safety. I will defeat this villain and retrieve Midoriya's body, said Nighteye. Nighteye walked into the room and faced Overhaul. "What pathetic garbage. So easily killed," said Overhaul. "Midoriya, I will avenge you," said Nighteye. Overhaul shot a massive barrage of spikes at Nighteye, but they were dodged. Meanwhile, somewhere inside Deku's mind, something was flickering. Am I dead?" asked Deku. "No, but you will be soon," said All Might. "All Might? What are you doing here? You aren't dead?" asked Deku. "I'm not here. I'm just a hallucination," said All Might. Deku let out a soft laugh. "Then what is this?" asked Deku. "Have you ever heard of your life flashing before your eyes?" asked All Might. Deku looked around and suddenly he was surrounded with images of his life. Fight after fight, training again and again, each day growing stronger. "Did I do well?" asked Deku. "Keep watching," said All Might. Deku looked back to the images. There before him was the image of Muscular, moments from snapping his neck. "Back then you chose to live. Your fighting spirit drove you to new heights of power and brought you back from the brink," said All Might. "Then why not this time?" said Deku. "You tell me," asked All Might. I don't know," said Deku. "Are you running away?" asked All Might. "No, I'm not," said Deku. "Then stand up and fight. Young Midoriya, you aren't one to shrink from a fight, and you will not start now," said All Might. "But I don't think I'm strong enough to beat him," said Deku. All Might knelt down looking at Deku. "You are the strongest person I know. You have the potential to surpass me with your own power. You just need to stand up and fight. Now, what are you going to do? Are you going to stay here and die, knowing that Eri will suffer? Or will you pick yourself up and show that villain what you are made of?" said All Might. Deku's eyes snapped open. Deku gritted his teeth as he felt the massive spike through his torso. He reached down, grabbing it, then crushed it with his hands. His eyes locked on Overhaul, who was moments away from killing Nighteye. Not even thinking, Deku kicked off the wall he was previously pinned to and launched towards Overhaul. His fist smashed into the villain's face and slammed him into the cold floor. Overhaul stared up in terror. The eyes he was looking into held no mercy, no restraint. Their cold glare burned into the villain's mind as the gaping wound in Deku's stomach slowly closed. Deku clicked his knuckles. They were starting to repair and grow some sort of scales to increase damage and defense. "Why won't you die?" asked Overhaul. Overhaul slammed his hand on the ground again, but Deku shattered every spike effortlessly. Apologies. With a single devastating punch, tearing straight through them and smashing into Overhaul's stomach. The villain coughed up blood and then tried to grab Deku. The monstrous hero stamped on his hand, crushing it, then kicked him across the room. Overhaul slammed into the wall, and slammed his hand on it, launching more spikes at Deku. This time, Deku didn't deflect or destroy them. Using his improved speed, he slipped through them and got right in front of Overhaul's face. Before anyone could react, Deku began pummeling the villain relentlessly. In his left hand, he was using the water stream rock-smashing fist, and in his right, he was using the whirling wind slashing steel. Deku continued pummeling the villain, literally taking him apart. As he swung his fist, Deku roared up to the sky, then buried his fist into Overhaul's face. The wall behind him crumbled as the villain fell to the floor. Deku took a step back. "This is over. You don't stand a chance against my new combination technique, the Cross-Fang Dragon Slayer Fist," said Deku. Overhaul looked up at Deku. His eyes would barely focus and everything hurt. "No, you will die right here," said Overhaul. Overhaul slammed his fist on the ground again, but Deku was faster. He slipped past Overhaul's attack, and with one swift motion, cut off Overhaul's arms at the elbows. The villain screamed in pain, but for only a second, before Deku jabbed him in the neck, knocking him out. Nighteye stumbled over. He was injured from his battle, but that didn't matter to him. He was too busy being amazed that Deku was alive. "I saw you. You were dead. That spike had destroyed your torso," said Nighteye. Nighteye looked at the holes in Deku's uniform, but saw no evidence of a wound on Deku's body. Nighteye looked up, seeing that Deku's dark green hair was now jet black, and his eyes were now an even darker shade of red. "Absolutely incredible," said Nighteye. The heroes who were injured were rushed to the hospital. Deku was taken as well because Nighteye was worried about him. After hearing about his latest battle, the doctor who cared for Deku last time was put in charge of caring for him and getting to the bottom of whatever was happening to him. When Deku entered his room, the doctor was amazed to see the massive change since last time. "Good to see you in good health this time, young man. Tell me, what happened to you for this next step to activate?" "I was impaled through the torso by a rock spike," said Deku. The doctor looked at the gaping hole in Deku's costume. "Your regeneration is massively increasing. This has happened to you a month ago. I think you'd be dead," said the doctor. Deku nodded. The doctor noticed Deku's black hair and eyes. "So your hair and eyes have changed further as well." "And my hands," said Deku. Deku held out his hands. His knuckles were covered in almost scale-like substance. It didn't affect his finger movements, but massively increased his striking power. "Let's take a few blood samples and see what's changed." About an hour later, the doctor came out with some results. "You are a miracle of medicine. Somehow your drive to fight and survive has been turned into power. We can't find any source, but it still doesn't seem like a detrimental process as long as you don't mind the appearance changes," said the doctor. Yeah, I could just dye my hair green again," said Deku. "One possible cause that we found are these little active cells. They are producing a massive amount of power and require very little oxygen. In layman's terms, they are more efficient than the others. That when comparing your blood now to when you last were here, it's almost 30 times the number of these active cells. It appears some of your other cells are seeing these cells as the correct state and are choosing to become like them. Eventually, you'll be complete. Every cell in your body will be changed, and you'll be completely unstoppable," said the doctor. Deku smirked. "Well, that doesn't sound too bad," said Deku. A few weeks later, it was time for the UA Culture Festival. Class 1A had decided to do a dance and music concert. As part of the show, Deku would hold Aoyama over the crowd by a rope, but the night before, Deku realised the rope was damaged. "Why don't you use your binding cloth instead?" said Aoyama. "I'd rather use proper rope. You know, better safe than sorry," said Deku. The next day, Deku ran into town. He was amazed by his new speed and his endurance. It was just a little over a mile, but he was able to do the full distance in a full sprint without losing any breath. "This is amazing," said Deku. Deku brought what he needed, then walked outside. He began doing some stretches, when someone almost bumped into him. "Oh, sorry man," said Deku. "Careful, my boy. You almost ruined the taste of Gold Tips Imperial." "Hang on, I know that voice," said Deku. "Gentle, something about this kid seems familiar," said La Brava. La Brava looked at Deku's freshly dyed hair and looked at his freckled face. "He's the Quirkless kid from the sports festival," said La Brava. "It's you, gentle criminal," said Deku. Deku dropped into a stance. "What are you planning?" asked Deku. "The crime of the century, my dear boy. For you see, I will be breaking into UA," said Gentle. "Stay away from my school," yelled Deku. Deku leapt towards Gentle, but hit an elastic barrier instead, bouncing back. "Ah, my dear boy, we must be off. Doodle pip," said Gentle. Gentle elasticated the floor and jumped off. Deku didn't give up though. He flicked his binding cloth and wrapped it around the villain's leg, dragging him back down to earth. Deku leapt at the villain again, who tried to block his path with another barrier. Deku's eyes focused, however, and managed to see the barely visible barrier. With a swipe of his hand, he cut it in half. "How'd you do that?" asked Gentle. Deku leapt onto the villain, slamming into the floor, then throwing him into the side of the building. Deku tried to punch Deku, but it was sloppy. Deku ducked past it, landing several powerful punches on the villain's chest, dropping him. "This is over," said Deku. Gentle looked up into the cold red eyes above him, and resigned himself to defeat. However, La Brava hadn't given up. Gentle's body was covered in a pink aura, and he rose to his feet. "I will defeat you, for the one that I love," said Gentle. Gentle swung his fist, but this time it was much stronger and faster. But that didn't matter to Deku. He took a deep breath, activating his cross-fanged Dragon Slayer fist. Deku ducked past the attack, landing punch after devastating punch on Gentle's body. As if mini explosions were going off inside the villain's body, Deku pummeled the villain. Bones broke and ligaments were torn. Eventually, even though he was being enhanced by Labrava, Gentle couldn't even raise his arms. He collapsed to the floor unconscious, and Deku called the police. After explaining the situation, Deku went back to UA and had a lot of fun in the culture festival, unaware of the monster he would soon become. End of chapter 10.